Hello and welcome to the 7th ever episode of the Unsigned Manager podcast. My name is Siji Kolawole, and each week I take a look at football's key topics, headlines and stories and break them down to make them a bit more understandable. So like I said last week, I want to do a few episodes where I go into the past and I want to take a look at significant teams, events, tactics, styles that I missed because of my age. So between 2000 and 2006, Real Madrid put together a collection of stars which should have dominated Spanish and European football for decades. But for some reason the team fell short, success wasn't as good as it should have been, and in the end everything was broken up. So I want to take a look at the famous Galácticos team and understand what went wrong with Perez's master plan. So with that, let's get into the episode. So like always, let's go back, lay the foundation, set the background so we can understand exactly what we're dealing with here. So in the early 2000s, new president Florentino Perez of Real Madrid decided to announce that he would be signing at least one world-class Galáctico per summer, no matter the cost. So a Galáctico is a term broadly used for a superstar player, top level player. And the Galácticos were Perez's idea of a collection of all these top players used to build an indestructible team. But now that term has been kind of changed to a team of like spoiled divas who put their ego before team success, and it's like the definition of too many cooks in the kitchen, if you get me. The overall reputation of Perez's final Galáctico team was a failure, with Madrid putting media success and marketability over building a functional team. When this team was first put together, I was barely alive, and by the time they were broken up, I was in primary school. So it's a team that I've always heard of and understood the basics of, but never really watched or saw the demise. And funny enough, they weren't actually Madrid's first Galáctico team. The first superstar team was the 50s and 60s squad, which used a pretty similar model really, buying top level players for high fees such as club legends Alfredo Di Stefano, Ferenc Puskás, Hento, Copa, Santa Maria. They were all signed and they're now all top level legends at the club. And that was the first Galácticos team, but that's not the one that the term is synonymous with. The main team, the one your mind goes to when you hear the name, the vision you see of the white Siemens mobile kit, that took place between 2000 and 2007. Over a 7-year period, Real Madrid signed this level of talent: Luis Figo, Zinedine Zidane, the original Ronaldo, R9, David Beckham, Michael Owen, Robinho, Sergio Ramos. In that list of players, that's some of the best players of their era, and for some of them, they are knocking on the door of the greatest players of all time. But the team didn't even stop there. These are just the players that Perez signed. So Madrid picked up some players before Perez, or they weren't even like Galáctico status, or they come from the academy. Those players include Fernando Hierro, who was club captain for years, one of the most famous centre-backs at the club, probably rivaling Sergio Ramos for the greatest Madrid defender ever. Raúl, arguably Madrid's best striker of all time. Guti, Roberto Carlos, Michel Salgado, Steve McManaman, Nicola Anelka, Iker Casillas, Claude Makelele. With this level of players, it is astonishing that Madrid didn't go on an early Barcelona in 2010 or mid-Manchester United 2000s type of dominance. They should have been the greatest team of all time with no discussion. I mean, literally, these are some of the best players of all time playing at the same time in the same club. And don't get me wrong, they were successful, but their talent level suggests complete dominance. But poor planning, poor decision making, and valuing money over functionality is what spoiled this team. Okay, so let's go right back to the beginning, and we need to start at the pre-Florentino Perez years. And actually, funnily enough, Florentino Perez has been Real Madrid president pretty much my entire life. So I didn't actually know that he only took over in 2000. They were fresh off 2 Champions Leagues in 3 years in 98 and 2000. And had a squad full of really talented players like Fernando Morientes, a young Nicola Anelka, Raul and Roberto Carlos. However, current president Lorenzo Sanz had just lost his re-election bid for presidency to a civil engineer and construction tycoon named Florentino Perez. Now, Perez ran on the campaign which included fixing the club's bad financial performance, getting the stadium full of fans again, and signing elite talent to the club. And just to give you an idea, in the 99-2000 season, where Madrid didn't do so well in the league and finished 5th, but won the Champions League, the average attendance at the Santiago Bernabeu was only 36,000. But this is a stadium with an 81,000 capacity, so they were really underperforming. Fans didn't want to come to the games. So Perez ran on the campaign that was built on this promise: if I win the presidency, I will bring Luis Figo to Madrid. If I fail to sign him, I will pay every season ticket holder's fees for next season. So imagine that in today's context. A new club president with his first act signs a Ballon d'Or level player, which Figo won in the 2000-2001 season, moving him from arch rival to arch rival in the same league and starting a power shift. The closest equivalent in today's football would be if Robert Lewandowski moved back to Borussia Dortmund if the rivalry between Munich and Dortmund was more intense. Or maybe if Kylian Mbappe went to Marseille in the prime of his career, leaving PSG. That was an incredible statement of intent from Perez, and he got to work really quickly, reducing the debt from the club, selling fan favourite Fernando Redondo to AC Milan. Nicola Anelka was sold to PSG, and Perez had an amazing construction deal which ended up selling the training ground for just under 500 million euros and then building a replacement one for so much cheaper. And because of that, the club had a lot more funds and they were able to continue with Perez's Galácticos plan, when he announced that he'd be signing at least 1 star player per season. And the idea was to add superstar talent to Madrid's homegrown and developing talent at the club, taking the club to a completely new level, both commercially and on the pitch. But the idea to really push for homegrown players as well was rumoured to be by current manager Vicente Del Bosque. And if you don't know who he is, go back and see who was managing that Spain team when they dominated the world. Yeah, it was him. And he was a bit suspicious of a team that was just jam-packed with superstars that had no tie to the club. So he really pushed for academy players to be involved as well. And that's why this team is famously known as Sedan and Pavons. With the idea being that Perez wanted to sign superstar talent like Zinedine Zidane, and Del Bosque was pushing for players like Pavon, who was an academy graduate, to be included in the first team as well. So, 2000, Perez's first season. Key signings that summer are Luis Figo, who's the best player in the world, Santiago Solari, and Claude Makelele, who will become very key later on. And with his first season in Madrid under the books, Luis Figo put up 8 goals and 18 assists in just the league, which is pretty phenomenal, to be honest. Raul scores 25 and 32 in all comps. Guti chips in with 14 goals and 5 assists from midfield, and Madrid are looking pretty dominant. They win La Liga that year, finishing 7 points ahead of closest rival Deportivo and 17 points ahead of bitter rivals Barcelona. So Figo has left Barcelona, gone to join Madrid, finished 17 points ahead of them in the league, won the Ballon d'Or, everything's pretty rosy. So all in all, Perez is in for a good start. Won his first league titles and the club's first since 1997. Got to a Champions League semi-final, losing out to a strong Bayern Munich team. However, there are key points to note. Steve McManaman has said that the Madrid team were really arrogant and they never prepared properly for opposition, only watching 15 random minutes of one of their last games, which cost them severely against Bayern. But on the back of the good season start, Perez kept his promise, attracting elite talent. In came the guy everyone loves, Real Madrid legend Zinedine Zidane, for a world record 75 million euros. With the famous story being Perez passing a napkin all the way around the table to Zidane, which simply said, "Do you want to play for Real Madrid?" And I did a little bit of quick calculating to work out what that fee would be today, and in 2021, that would be £87 million, which funnily enough is what Barcelona bid for Everton's Richarlison in the last transfer window, just to put that into perspective. Madrid are also heavily after Roma and Italian legend Francesco Totti at the time. Constantly begging to sign him, but Totti decides to stay and be loyal to Rome. And I really respect that. I understand that why he wouldn't want to leave, but I just think for all the YouTube compilations, it would have been so much more fun to have a team with Figo and Zidane and Totti in it at the same time. The passing, the creativity, would have been a joke. But anyway, we're in the 2001-2002 season. Zidane has just joined, but it's not all plain sailing. Del Bosque is kind of confused about why the club have signed Zidane, unsure of where he was going to play since he was a number 10. But Del Bosque always used a 4-4-2, and Zidane was a 10 for France and Juve, which Madrid didn't play with. La Liga started off poorly, with the team only a point above the relegation zone after 6 games. But soon enough, the club got back on track, and there was talks of a treble. At the time, Madrid were in a tight title race, had got to a Champions League final and a Copa del Rey final. And the club even had the Copa del Rey final moved to March 6th, so that the game would be played on Madrid's 100th anniversary as a club. But funnily enough, they were beaten by Deportivo in the cup final. And apparently the Deportivo fans, when they realised they were going to win, started singing happy birthday to all the Real Madrid fans. So that's a good bit of comedic timing from Deportivo. Madrid also lost the league title to Rafa Benitez's Valencia, finishing third behind them and Deportivo after losing 3 games in a row at the end of the season. Also, side note, late end of season collapses will become normal for this team. And isn't it kind of funny that former Liverpool legend Rafa Benitez, is he a legend? He might be a legend. Anyway, that he might become Everton manager. Just funny little side note. But in the end, the season didn't end all bad. Becoming the signature moment for the Galactico era, the peak, the absolute peak of the era, Zidane scored that left-footed volley in Hampden Park against Bayern Leverkusen to again make Madrid the kings of Europe. And on a personal note, I think this might be the best aesthetic looking goal ever. The full volley on the lefty after the cross from Carlos is incredible. And it looks like there is absolutely no one near Zidane. And the wind up, everything about the goal is top quality. Winning the Champions League seemed the main goal for Perez, and it was proof that his philosophy of including superstar players could win domestic and European trophies within a few seasons. And I went back and rewatched the game again after a few days because I hadn't seen the entire match in a while. And I wanted to get a feel for that team in a big game. And keep in mind, they were up against a Leverkusen team who could have easily won a treble that year, losing out in 2 cup finals and a tight league race in the Bundesliga. But Madrid dominated. Zidane was excellent, transitioning the ball so well up the pitch. And if you haven't ever seen it, first, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch the game because Zidane is absolutely incredible. But the best comparison in the modern day would probably be, you know, when Kevin De Bruyne is driving up the pitch and it's like he's not fast and he's not incredibly agile, but it doesn't really matter because you can't get the ball off him. That's what Zidane is like. Imagine like if De Bruyne was more elegant. Actually, forget that. Do you remember Yaya Toure in the season? He put up 20 and 9 in the league, and Yaya's driving in the middle of the pitch and he's not that fast, but it doesn't matter. That's what Zidane is like. But the guy that really stood out to me in this game was Claude Makelele. And he's someone that's probably been a little bit lost in history, if I'm being honest. He didn't join Madrid until he was 27 years old and didn't join the Premier League until 30. So I'm not even sure if I've ever seen his best athletic performances, but Makelele is mesmerizing. He's 5'9", but like an absolute unit. You can't go past him. There's a difference between players who are just strong, and because of that, you can't really run around them because they're not off the ball, like Danilo Pereira or a William Carvalho. Makelele's got like an incredible sense of timing, so his tackles are crisp and sharp, and he has all the power to go behind that. It seems like he's so strong that when he tackles people, it hurts, but he's not. He's not clamping. He's not being nasty. He's just getting the job done. When he was at Madrid, he was never really respected, and he felt that. Perez famously came out and said that Makelele's technical technique was poor. He couldn't pass the ball. He couldn't dribble with it. He had no skill, no technique. But I think that's just in the way that Madrid used him. Because when he went to Chelsea, he was well known for starting the attacks, taking the ball off the centre back, starting the attacks, playing longer passes into the fullbacks, into the wingers, pushing Lampard higher up the pitch. Again, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's kind of incredible to watch how dominant one person is, especially when he's in the midfield by himself. Madrid are playing 4-1-2-1-2 with two wingers. So Solari and Figo are wider. Sedan's pushing higher up the pitch. Makelele's playing central midfield by himself. The best comparison modern day might be Fernandinho at his peak. Peak Fernandinho. The one at Manchester City that was taking all the defensive burden off Yaya Toure and David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne, clamping people and moving the ball forward. That's what Makelele's like. He's nasty to play against, and in the same way as Fernandinho, actually, they get lost in the background because they're playing with such amazing attacking players. But when you watch just them, you realise the levels that they're at. But all in all, 2 seasons have brought a league title and a Champions League, with Perez signing 1 Ballon d'Or winner in Figo and World Player of the Year at the time in Sedan, who I also actually think is probably a top 5 player of the modern era. And this is the peak, the summit of the Galácticos team, the point where everything is going well for them. Okay, now 3 years deep, start of the 02-03 season, and staying true to form, Florentino Perez brings in Ronaldo Nazario, R9, El Phenomenon, probably the greatest striker of all time, to the club for 46 million euros. I know that nowadays it's a bit easier to understand that Madrid had all these players and a great team. But if you really think about this for a second, it's absolutely ludicrous they have this much talent. Ronaldo had finished top 3 4 times in the last 6 years in the Ballon d'Or, and he won 2 of them. Zidane had finished top 3 3 times in the previous 6 years, winning once, and Figo had won 1 in 2000. Can you imagine the Twitter reaction today? The pundits, the screaming, crying out for FFP if this happened now. 3 attacking geniuses coupled with all the extraordinary talent all playing in the same team. This is the kind of team that you'd build on Ultimate Team. This is what a 12-year-old would do on career mode if he had the opportunity, and Madrid are doing this in real life. For younger listeners, this is, imagine arguably 3 of the best players in the world, 3 of the top 10 players in the world playing in the same team at the same time. This is kind of like Messi, Neymar and Suarez, but better. Or Ronaldo, Bale and Benzema, if Bale and Benzema were way better than they were. It's not really comprehensible how good this team is. Madrid's regular midfield and attacking lineup included Claude Makelele, Zinedine Zidane, Santiago Solari, Luis Figo, Esteban Cambiaso, R9, Raul Guti, with Roberto Carlos and Michel Salgado bombing down the wings. It is incredible how stacked this team is. But again, this is really key to the story. Do not forget this. This isn't what Del Bosque wanted. Vicente Del Bosque had continuously asked for more defensive cover, as defenders Ivan Campo and Aitor Karanka had left the club, and he saw big holes in the team which needed functional, non-headline signing players to fix. but that's not how Perez works. R9 was fresh off a fantastic 2002 World Cup, winning, glory, 2 goals in the final, and Perez decided that he'd rather sign him for the commercial benefit than do what his manager wanted. Ronaldo also went on to win his second Ballon d'Or that year, so instead of signing the necessary defensive players that his manager wanted to fix the gaping holes in the team, Perez went with commercial success over football functionality and brought R9 in. This also happened while defensive midfield player Claude Makelele felt that he was underappreciated and wanted a bigger salary for his efforts in the team. And to be honest, Makelele had a strong case. Zidane was making about 4 times as much as he was, even though the entire team and Zidane had all publicly said to Perez how important Makelele was to the system. Without him, Madrid had no defensive solidity, no safety net, no platform, no destroyer to build all their attacking creativity off of. If there's no Makelele, Madrid probably lose every game 6-5, rather than being able to dominate teams they've been doing the last few years. So let's take a look at the 02-03 season, with Madrid again faltering at the start of the year. Ronaldo had joined the team injured after the World Cup and ended up missing his first 3 games. And then after scoring on his debut, which gave him a lot of applause and love from Madrid fans, he then went on a 6-match goalless run. Madrid stuttered for a while, struggling to find form and real consistency in the team, but after the Intercontinental World Cup win in December of 2002, they went on a hot streak, only losing once in 22 games in the league. And even though he missed time because of injuries and health problems, Ronaldo ended the year with 28 goal involvements in 31 games. And this is the season he had the famous hat-trick against Manchester United at Old Trafford in the Champions League quarter-final, where he got a standing ovation from the Manchester crowd. And when you have, this is probably what Perez is looking for, because when you have this level of talent in a team, if there's a point where you can put everyone on the pitch, you're almost guaranteed to be okay. R9 is missing time because of injury. He's had 2 ACL tears. He's not as fast, as sharp as he used to be, but he can put up almost a goal involvement in a game in an entire campaign. That's the level of team that Madrid have right now. But big key point in their season, big key point, is the Champions League second leg semi-final against Juventus. Claude Makelele is ruled out of this game because of a suspension, and 35-year-old captain centre-back Fernando Hierro is exposed athletically by Alessandro Del Piero. And keep in mind that Del Bosque had said multiple times to Perez he wanted defensive cover and he didn't get any. And Makelele was proven right that he was a key part in the team, because without him there, Madrid are so vulnerable at the back, and he's really trying to prove his importance, but Perez and Jorge Valdano, who was sporting director, just weren't having it. Even though Madrid did end up losing that Champions League tie to Juventus, they were successful in the league, had won their 29th league title that season after they beat Athletic Bilbao on the final day of the season. However, Perez managed to screw this one as well, because he untimely announced David Beckham would be joining the club a few days before a title decider. The legendary captain Fernando Hierro, there was rumours of him departing, and rumours that Perez was going to sack Del Bosque after the season ended. So none of the players were in a really joyful mood. No one was excited. I want to go and give a rundown of what happened in the summer at just before the 2003-04 season, just to understand the mood at the club right now. So a week after winning the title, Del Bosque is sacked by Perez, even though the entire club wanted him to stay. He had changed his formation to suit Perez's signings, switching from his normal 4-4-2 to a 4-3-3 or 4-1-2-1-2 to accommodate Figo and Zidane and Ronaldo. His calming presence had relaxed the squad of big egos. He had goodwill from each of the players, and he'd won 2 league titles in the Champions League in 3 years. But Perez said, and quote, Del Bosque was showing signs of exhaustion, and I wanted to be sincere about this, our belief was that he was not the right coach for the future. That right there probably sums up Florentino Perez, where when he has a situation that is good and thriving and successful, he somehow manages to spoil it. Go back to Zinedine Zidane leaving as manager a few weeks ago. Why is he leaving? Because he feels like he's not fully appreciated by the club, even though he's putting in a lot of work. Why did Zidane leave the first time? Exhaustion, because he'd won 3 Champions Leagues in a row and he didn't feel like the club was ready for a rebuild. Why did Sergio Ramos just leave the club yesterday? Because he didn't get his new contract, because he didn't feel like he was appreciated by the club. Florentino Perez needs to get out of his own way. He's making situations harder for himself. And a squad member of the team that won the league, Ivan Helguera, said the players were so frustrated with the decision to sack Del Bosque that no one wanted to attend the league title winning party. They all had to go in the end because it would be disrespectful to the club, but the mood was so somber that no one wanted to party. Claude Makelele's demand of a pay increase was not met, even though the senior players in the team thought again that he was worthy of a contract boost. A few years after this all shook out, Makelele has said that Perez gave him his word that his contract would be extended and that his deal would be renegotiated so that he'd get a contract increase. But after signing David Beckham, Perez turned around to Makelele, to arguably the club's most important player, and said there was no money left for renegotiation. Jorge Valdano, who was at the time Real Madrid's general manager and essentially their sporting director, actually said to Makelele that he should be happy to play for Real Madrid for free, and that he had to find an offer of at least 15 million euros if he wanted to leave the club. And I can't imagine how disrespectful that must be to a player who was given so much to the club, allowed this entire Galácticos circus to happen with his defensive stability, being told that he should be happy to play for the club for free. How tone deaf, how illogical, how short-sighted are the Madrid ownership at this point. Makelele did exactly what Valdano told him to do. Found a club, Chelsea, who were willing to pay 15 million for him. They scooped up Makelele, slotted him next to Lampard, and they dominated the Premier League. Literally redefining the defensive midfield position as the Makelele role and transforming the way that formations are played in English football. This is a guy that the club let go, and Madrid players were absolutely furious with it, with Zidane saying famously, "Why do you need to add another layer of gold onto the Bentley when you've already lost the engine?" After the sacking of Del Bosque and the club slightly unravelling a little bit, Carlos Queiroz, who was famously known as Alex Ferguson's assistant at Manchester United, he was appointed manager. Even though he had not managed a major club side at this point, allegedly with him being forced to pick the star players each week, regardless of form or tactics, to boost commercial viability. The Galácticos signings went on, even though tactically they were strange. As I said before, David Beckham came into the club, a highly talented right winger, even though Madrid already had a highly talented right winger in Luis Figo. And I know that people say this about top teams now, like Bayern Munich and Manchester City, but this is different. This is a different level. This is like having Mohamed Salah on your right wing and then deciding you want to sign Leroy Sané to play him at the same time. It's such a redundant signing which angered the players, because although they understood David Beckham's talent and it wasn't his fault, it unbalanced the team. Figo is now wondering who's starting, him or Beckham. Beckham's thinking the same. Neither of them are bench level players. And it felt more like a commercial move rather than good squad building. Perez also organised the club to go on a long, money-filled pre-season tour in Asia, which left the players drained and unprepared for the new campaign, as they had to focus more on autograph signings and photos rather than tactics and fitness. And just another small mistake, Madrid had, this doesn't really happen in football now, but they owned 50% of Samuel Eto'o's contract at Mallorca. So they essentially had like a first buy at Eto'o, or if they sold half his contract, they would get paid for it. And they had the first offer to sign him, and they decided they didn't want a striker, even though exactly a year after that, they bought a striker. So imagine if that Madrid team had added Samuel Eto'o, someone who dominated up until maybe, 2011 to this team in 03. But no, Perez was short-sighted, decided that R9 and Raul would be good enough for the campaign. Rather than keep going with developing younger talent, he wanted big star names. So, quick recap just to make sure everyone knows what's happening right now. We're into the 03-04 season. Madrid have just sold a world-class defensive midfield player who was keeping the team together. Their long-term captain Fernando Hierro is leaving with not really anyone to replace him. The manager has been sacked a few days after winning the league title, with a slightly inexperienced one coming in, who is also being forced to play all the star players regardless of fit. The players are knackered after a long-term pre-season, and key squad issues still have not been resolved. Somehow though, through all of this dysfunction and lunacy, Madrid actually started pretty well in the league this year. But they lost a shock cup game to Zaragoza and suffered an embarrassing comeback loss to Monaco in the Champions League, with disgruntled loaned out player Fernando Morientes scoring to dump Madrid out of the Champions League. And do you remember what I said earlier about late end of season collapses becoming a norm for Madrid? Well, this year they lost 7 of their last 10 league games, including their last 5 in a row, as they slumped to 4th and bottled the league. This year was their first trophyless season since Perez took over, and really a big embarrassment for Madrid. At the end of this year, Carlos Queiroz was sacked, but Perez won the presidency election again, remaining in charge for the beginning of the 04-05 season. And if you can't tell, the walls are starting to crumble, the foundation's getting a bit shaky, and Galácticos are, well, at this point really they're just hanging on by a thread. So 04-05 season, let's go through this pretty quickly. At this point, Perez finally realised that Del Bosque was right and that Madrid needed defensive recruitments. So he brought in Walter Samuel for 25 million euros from Roma. Patrick Vieira was also heavily considered to join the club since Esteban Cambiaso was sold to Inter Milan, but Vieira decided to do the right thing, the smart thing, and stick in North London until the end of the season, which was a very good decision for all Arsenal fans. Another defender in Jonathan Woodgate was brought in, as well as fellow Englishman Michael Owen, adding another Ballon d'Or winner to this headline team. Remember, Madrid had decided that Samuel Eto'o was not good enough to start, even though he'd been smashing through the league at Mallorca. They let him go to arch nemesis Barcelona for 27 million euros, instead bringing in Michael Owen for 12 million a year later. This is just such a poor decision in hindsight. New manager was Antonio Camacho for the season, so Madrid are currently on their 3rd Galáctico manager, and he was much more strict than the other two, choosing to bench the Galácticos to make way for tactics. But since the results were poor and he was losing favour at the club, he decided to resign in September. It was a well-known thing behind the scenes that Perez said to all managers of the club, either you play the Galácticos or you leave. Just for an easy example, Madrid went away to the new camp, El Clásico, playing Barcelona, and they started a front 6 which included David Beckham and Guti, which is a right winger and attacking midfielder at defensive midfield, behind a front 4 of Zidane, Raul, Figo and Ronaldo. A lineup like that might be acceptable in career mode, but that is not how you play a football team in real life. How unbalanced, how poorly built. No wonder Madrid lost 3-0 that day to goals from Samuel Eto'o and Ronaldinho. How ironic. Anyway, Perez then tried to get legendary Italian manager Arrigo Sacchi to manage the team, which probably would have been another Galáctico really, but he outright refused, knowing that the manager would get blamed for anything that went wrong and they'd be forced to operate without freedom due to Perez's insane commercial demands. So right now, Perez is at a point where his influence and his monetary push is causing managers to not want to manage the team. A team with this level of talent This amount of creativity, people don't want to manage because the president is a bit insane. This is how much Perez was getting on everyone's nerves. A new manager in Brazilian Luxembourgo and Thomas Gravesen at defensive midfield were signed, and they helped, but again, Madrid came up short, ending another year without a trophy and going through 3 managers in one season. The writing is fully on the wall at this point. Star players are aging out, players are looking to leave to get more game time, and serious rifts are forming at the club. 05-06 season, Luis Figo leaves the club for Inter Milan. Throughout the end of the last campaign and the start of this one, Figo's had a serious rift with new manager Luxembourgo, and his departure to Inter Milan was quickly followed by Walter Samuel and Santiago Solari following him. Michael Owen's short stay at the club was also over, leaving for Newcastle after only 1 season in Spain. Imagine if they actually did sign Eto'o. The main signings for this season were Julio Baptista. I only remember him at Arsenal. He was only there for about a season. He was massive and hit a football so hard you thought he could take the paint off the post. They signed him, they signed Robinho, another Galáctico, and the first Spanish Galáctico in Sergio Ramos from Sevilla. This season was another slope down the mountain. Again, no trophy. And the 3 most memorable performances of this year were all against Madrid. The first one being Henry dominating the Bernabeu in the Champions League knockout stages for Arsenal. Ronaldinho probably putting on the greatest individual performance I've ever seen in a 3-0 battering of Madrid at the Bernabeu, where he got a standing ovation. And Michel Salgado said after that he wasn't sure whether the Madrid fans were clapping Ronaldinho for his performance or clapping him to shame the Madrid players into understanding how poor they were. And lastly, Diego Milito scoring 4 goals against Madrid as they were battered 6-1 by Zaragoza in the cup. This year was the end. Finally, it was over. Perez stepped down halfway through the season on the 27th of February 2006. Ronaldo's injuries were overcoming his performances at this point. Sedan retired after the World Cup that year. There was a carousel of managers and directors, and no one could have any impact on Madrid's on-field performances. Perez's initial plans had succeeded. Madrid were an absolute behemoth, toppling the richest club in football list for multiple years, but the Galacticos should have been more. He shouldn't have looked at this just as a monetary project. He could have built the greatest legacy of a football team ever. And with that, all the commercial success would have come anyway. He messed the game up. He did it back to front rather than valuing performance. He took commercial ability first and then hoped that he could squash all this talent of players together and they produce something good. If he had taken time with the process, listened to managers, listened to other important football minds at the club, he would have known that this wouldn't have worked out so easily. During these 6 years, Madrid gave home to the biggest players in the world, and at times they did play scintillating and seemingly unstoppable football. Perez has got rid of the club's debt. He turned them into a financial cash machine. He laid the blueprint on exactly how to build a famous and successful club. But he also gave the blueprint on exactly how not to do it. And funnily enough, Perez almost had it completely right when he retook presidency a year later. And from 2009 till 2018, he rebuilt the Galácticos again. Benzema, Bale, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, Modric, Toni Kroos. He had built the Galácticos again, but he'd done it smarter, more effectively. But once again, Perez has got in his own way, and now his team is crumbling right now. They're being held together by Benzema's brilliance and Zidane's managerial skill, and he's now left the club. It's almost like that stupid quote, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Because Perez has gone in a complete circle. The club is back in major debt. Club captain Sergio Ramos is leaving, just like Hierro. A lack of care to the manager caused him to leave after many other managers were brought in to replace him, like Del Bosque and Sedan. Rafa Varane wants to leave. David Alaba was brought in on an expensive contract. Flops Eden Hazard, Luka Jovic, And that's not even to bring up the whole Super League fiasco. It's like the entire thing is repeating itself. And Florentino Perez has the brain and the blueprint to build a complete super club. He's almost like Ed Woodward, where all the commercial things, all the money, all the success, leave that to him. All the footballing tactics, all the knowledge, all the player recruitment, give that to someone else. In the end, the Galácticos are a failure. They won 2 league titles and a Champions League in 6 years while having, 4 Ballon d'Or winners in their squad, as well as legendary keeper Iker Casillas, Claude Makelele, Raul, David Beckham, who came 3rd in a Ballon d'Or. The club should have won more. And I think if you were to see this team built in modern times, I don't think you would do it this far. The closest example you would see would be a Manchester City, and they, well known, do not already sign finished talent. Manchester City don't sign top level players at the time. They sign good players and develop them into that, like a Bernardo Silva or a Kevin De Bruyne, players you know that they're right on the cusp, but they don't sign finished articles because it's so hard to gel that many players in together. And I think if you were to see this now, you would see it done much more slowly, much more carefully, with more emphasis on the academy and gelling in young, promising talent, because the way Perez did this, he really fumbles what could have been the greatest team of all time. And that's the end of the Galácticos episode. I really appreciate you guys for listening, for all the support. Please keep sharing, supporting, tell a friend to tell a friend. I really like doing the old episodes. It's really interesting to go back and learn about key things in football you think you know about, we actually don't have enough details of. So if there's anything that anyone thinks would be a great episode or a good suggestion, please put it in the comment section of @TheUnsignedManager on Instagram. Big thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks and goodbye.